What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have an Amanita Pantherina trip report for you. The title of this trip report is From Zen State to Looping Dimensional Horror, and was submitted to Erowid in 2020 by the user Some Random Guy. With all that being said, let our story begin. So I recently purchased some Amanita Pantherina online. I picked them up at the post office, and when I got back, there was a strong feeling of rain in the air. That almost purifying feeling I feel when, before, and after a storm hits. It felt like the right night to try some. I opened up the bag and was immediately drawn to one particular mushroom that looked to be the strongest in the batch. It almost seemed to call to me, so I ate it. About an hour and a half later, I was feeling some effects, but nothing much, so I got around 3 or 4 grams and made myself some tea. As I got to my computer and sat down, the first one I ate started to fully kick in. I was surprised as to the intensity of the effect experienced with just that one mushroom. I put off drinking the tea for a while, and instead simply enjoyed the effect I was already experiencing, which was a strong heightening of my spiritual perception, as well as a very calm, meditative-like state of mind. My patience and focus were sent sky high, and I was surprised to find no impairment. I actually found myself able to perform tasks more effectively due to a complete focus on said task with little to no outside thoughts impairing that focus. Well, around this time, a friend of mine, R, showed up, and we drove out to Burger King where a mutual friend, D, was working. They were understaffed, so we ended up helping clean for some free slow sodas/burgers. Again, I was surprised to notice that if anything, the effects allowed me to perform tasks more efficiently. I'd focus in on what I was doing intensely and completely, and just kind of lock into a meditative trance. The manager was none the wiser, and was actually fairly impressed with my work. Well, around this time, I ended up drinking that tea. When it did kick in, the effects were essentially the same, but intensified. R and D both ended up staying the night at my place, and as the night drew on, I'd eat the occasional mushroom. It was a very good experience up until this next part was done in a moment of absolute stupidity on my part. I was foolish. Instead of just accepting the already perfectly good experience I was having, I wanted to take this substance to its fullest depths. Well, I got it. I ended up consuming about 24 grams of dried panther caps that night. It was the first time I've ever been that foolish with psychedelics, and it is definitely going to be the last. I went out to my Jeep to be alone for a while, and that's where I ended up eating nearly the entire bag I had bought. I felt myself ascending higher and higher, and experienced what I can only describe as a dark, predatory kind of enlightenment. I felt my entire essence harden and compress like rock. Higher and higher I ascended, until I started to notice that I was unable to remain absent of thought, which somehow seemed vital to my upward continuation, which was happening with or without the ideal frame of mind. I knew I was definitely going to need someone to watch me. I went into my room where R and D were hanging out and passed out on my bed. And then I experienced it. The barrier of thought was broken through, and I was sucked up into the fullness of the trip. I don't remember much of the following hours, aside from the moment I experienced what can only be described as infinity, and went from being mostly unresponsive to jumping up exclaiming, "Holy fuck! I just experienced infinity, holy fuck, holy fuck," which was met with amusement by R&D. I know during this period in time, I experienced a lot of mind-blowing and amazing things, but my sober mind can't even begin to comprehend them. Aside from a couple of incredibly bizarre flashes of memory, I can't even begin to try and form into words. And then there was the come down, which comprises about 95% of everything that was comprehensible enough to form into memory. Around the time it began, I remember going outside to smoke a cigarette. This was the only time during the full-blown trip I was actually somewhat conscious of my surroundings, which I failed at. I reached in my pocket to try to get the cig. No, I need the cig. Reality kept blipping forward, and I couldn't focus on anything. R helped me light it and put it in my mouth, where I ended up trying to put the lit part back in my mouth after taking a drag off of it. I noticed that I had forgotten everything I have ever known, except for what was immediately in front of me. I believed it would be like this permanently, until I relearned it. I leapt up, babbling on about this discovery and trying to relearn everything. This is concrete, and those are trees, which was met again with amusement by R&D up until I had another discovery. This was insanity, and I was doomed to repeat this cycle forever. I now understood what it was like to go insane. I wasn't coming back. Somewhere around that point, I died, or at least I thought I died. My essence drifted out, and the vibrational frequency of reality flipped. This is it, I thought. This is the end of my life. I'll never see my friends and family again. Luckily, I didn't appear to panic. From the perception of people around me, nor in my own delirious perception. I'm very practiced at going with whatever I experience and accepting it rather than panicking. And if not for this, things may have gone a lot worse than they did. Here is where I began to experience constant deaths and rebirths. Through alternate dimension after alternate dimension, I experienced it like this. Everyone that has ever lived in any particular dimension, we're all one soul experiencing itself from a vast sea of different lifetimes/perceptions. Each life the soul would increase in age until it hit the oldest of the batch, at which point the soul would reach full enlightenment, and the vibratory frequency of that dimension would flip, and the soul would then start as a young soul on the opposite frequency, the youngest of the young, work its way to the oldest of the old, and then the frequency would flip again. Each time the flip would happen, it was realized by the soul that time essentially did not exist. An incredible sense of enlightenment would occur, which I can't even begin to form into words. And it would keep going on like this infinitely. I would experience this time and time again. Dimension after dimension after dimension. Endless lifetimes came and went, and the more I came down, they began to get more and more twisted and horrific in ways I can't begin to describe. One of the more comprehensible ones was a dimension where a deep-cutting psychological, physical, and emotional pain was the core of its foundation on both of its opposite frequencies. During the come down, I was apparently convulsing violently quite frequently. I'd keep trying to get up and walk around, whereas while I was coming up and during the peak, I mostly just sat there, except that I couldn't really walk. I'd take a couple steps and my whole body would give out on me. I'd go dead weight and collapse to the ground. Though while looking back on it, I do remember a lot of this. My memory of it is heavily clouded in delirium, and I didn't recognize anyone as being people I knew, nor did I recognize them as even being from this dimension. Somewhere around 10 a.m. the next morning, I came back to, sitting in R's truck, and he was asking me questions about, like, my name, the year I was born, the current year, which I apparently got wrong, though I remember answering them correctly. I was still somewhat delirious. At this point, I managed to successfully walk across the yard back to my house, though with some difficulty. Sat down at my computer where I spent 20 minutes or so trying to bring up YouTube and look up a song. My whole field of vision was like one massive blind spot. Though I could technically see, I couldn't see with any degree of accuracy. And my perception was still blipping forward a lot. I sat down on my bed and talked to R for a while. By about 11, I was still feeling the effects, but I was fully coherent and able to function normally. At the time I am typing this out, this happened 2 days ago. All in all, I will definitely be buying these mushrooms again, but I'll be pacing myself with them next time. The experience was, at times, incredible beyond anything I've ever experienced, and at other times horrific and hellish, again, beyond anything I have ever experienced. However, difficulty breeds improvement, and I definitely feel like I've taken the experience and used it to improve myself. I feel like I'm better all around. As for a rough timeline, 7 p.m. the first cap eaten, 9 p.m. made tea, full effects of first cap kick in. 10:30 p.m. began drinking the tea. 11:30 p.m. finished drinking the tea. 1:30 a.m. feeling full effects from the tea, eating small amounts of the mushrooms here and there. 2 a.m. went to the Jeep and ate the majority of the mushrooms. Perception of time no longer intact at this point. 10 a.m. became fully aware of and able to interact with reality. 11 a.m. able to function normally. And by 1 p.m. the effects had worn off fully. Alright, everybody. That is the end of our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Share with us your Amanita experiences down in the comments below. Check out the other videos and playlists on my channel, and I will see you in the next one, fam. Deuces.